Good morning, students. Let's begin our science class of class 8. Today, in lesson 12, I will explain page number 156 of your book, and the topic is how the ways of increasing and reducing friction. So, first of all, I will explain how we can increase the friction. One very good example you can see, that is, we can increase the friction by making the surface rough. For example, you all have seen the matchbox. On the surface, on the side of the matchbox, there is rough surface, and this rough surface help in increasing the friction between the matchstick and the matchbox, as a result of which, when we strike the matchstick on the rough surface which is present on the side of the matchbox, then the friction is developed, and due to this friction, heat is generated, and this heat causes the material which is present on the tip of the matchstick to catch fire, and the matchstick starts burning. So this is one method by means of which we can increase friction, that is by making the surface rough. Second is by making the grooves. Students, you all might have seen that in the sole of the shoes, grooves are being made. The aim of making these grooves or developing these grooves in the sole of the shoes is to increase the friction. So by making the grooves in the sole of the shoes, the friction between the sole of our shoes and the ground on which we want to walk is increased, and as a result of these grooves, what happens? The sole of the shoes is able to have proper grip on the ground, and therefore we do not slip. In one more case, you all have seen that the players wear the shoes, and the shoes which they wear, in their sole spikes are present, and these spikes are also doing the same work as the grooves developed in the sole of the shoes. These spikes also help in developing the friction between the ground and the shoes of the player, and therefore when the athletes or other players are playing various games, the friction is increased, and due to this they did not slip. Third example, where by means of which you can understand how friction can be increased, that is the tires of the various vehicles which we are using as mode of transport from one place to another, like the car, buses, tractors, bicycles and scooters, etc. Their tires are treaded, which help in increasing the friction between the tire and the road, thereby providing proper grip on the road, and hence helps in preventing the vehicles from skidding. Students, one more very good example I am giving, where you can understand how the friction can be increased and how it is advantageous. That is the brake shoe in the automobiles. They are also used to increase the friction, and when we apply the brake shoe stops the motion of the rotating disc due to the friction developed between the drum lining and the disc of the wheels which is rotating, and therefore the wheel stops. So these are some of the various ways by means of which we can understand how we can increase the friction. Now students, I will tell you some of the ways by means of which friction can be reduced. The first method is by using the lubricants. Lubricants, you understand, that is, lubricants are those substances which are used or which are applied to reduce the friction in various places. So, for example, if you have seen that we use the lubricant like grease or machine oil, which we use for applying between the parts of the machines, so that the friction between the parts of the machines are reduced and therefore they can move, they can work efficiently, and their damage is stopped due to the continuous rubbing of the parts of the machine. So how we can reduce? One method by means of which we can reduce friction, that is by applying the lubricants like oil or grease in between the parts of the moving parts of the machine. As a result, what happens? A thin layer is formed there and the moving surface do not directly rub against each other, and thereby it helps in reducing the friction and also protects the various parts of the machine from getting damaged or undergoing wear and tear. Students, one more very good example where you see that by applying the lubricants we can reduce the friction. For example, you all have played the carom board, and in the carom board we are using the talcum powder, which is a dry lubricant, and this also helps in reducing the friction between the carom board coins and makes them move faster when the powder is applied on the surface of the carom board, because it helps in forming a layer of talcum powder is formed between the carom board coins and the striker as well as the surface of the carom board, and therefore the friction is reduced due to the presence of thin layer of talcum powder which we apply on the surface of the carom board, and therefore it helps in moving of the reducing the friction. Next method by means of which we can reduce the friction, that is when the surfaces are highly polished, the irregularities of the surface are covered by making them smoother, and when we make the surface of the rough objects smooth, then what happens? The friction is greatly reduced. So this is also one very good method by means of which we can reduce the friction, that is by polishing the surface. One more method, students, by means of which we can reduce the friction, that is, you all have seen that nowadays the bags in which we carry the various things when we do journey or we travel, that is, at the base of the suitcase or the briefcase, small wheels are applied, or which are called as the rollers. And what these rollers or wheels which are attached to the base of the suitcase help? They help in reducing the friction, and therefore we are able to pull them very smoothly, and we need not to lift that heavy object. So this is how we can reduce the friction, that is by using or attaching roller or wheels on the base of the suitcase. Students, one more method by means of which we can reduce the friction, that is, you all have seen that the bodies of the car, boat, aeroplanes, jet planes, etc., they are made streamlined. Streamlined means boat shaped, and this shape also helps in reducing the air friction. So this is also very good method by means of which we can reduce the friction, that is by making the shape of the body streamlined like the boat in order to reduce the friction. Students, I hope you have understood how we can, the various ways how we can increase the friction and the various ways by means of which we can reduce the friction. Your homework for today is learn about the various ways of increasing friction as well as the various methods of reducing friction. Thank you and have a nice day.